and thank you so much for joining us for our webinar entitled Agents of Influence. My name is Renee Hobbs, and you're here for what I hope will be a fascinating, provocative discussion about gamification in media literacy education. So before we get started though, however, if you're new to Education Lab experience, you know we always like to start with something we call an emotional check-in. Put a mark next to the emoji that you're feeling like today. I'm gonna put hopeful, because right now I'm feeling a little bit hopeful. So that's why I marked hopeful as my adjective for today. Use the annotate tool and mark up the emoji that best represents your feeling at this present moment, whether that's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, or 2 a.m. Central European time. We're happy you're here. We want to know how you're feeling. Frank says he's feeling sleepy. Thanks for sharing. Karen says affectionate. Wonderful. Who else would like to share? If you're struggling to use the digital annotation tool, don't worry about it. You can just open up your microphone and tell me which emoji comes closest to matching your feeling.
I'm excited.
Wonderful. Well, of course you are. You're getting to meet 20 or 25 new friends.
Content.
Oh, what a great emotion to have. Lucky you.
You get to meet my teammates who all used my link. So are all called Anahita Dalmia.
Hello, I'm Anahita. I also put excited.
I'm happy you're feeling that way. And if you're feeling overwhelmed or silly or depressed or frustrated or invisible, well, we have a kind of come as you are policy.
I'm Anahita. Anna hit to kind of break it up for you. Renee's seen me do this a couple of times. My teammates see me do it frequently, but it's just so that nobody feels confused on how to say my name. Today, we are going to be sharing with you Agents of Influence, which is a media literacy gaming experience that is designed to teach middle school students how to combat mis and disinformation in their daily lives by allowing them and enabling them to evaluate information more critically. It's been a long journey getting where we are with this experience today. And we're not 100% there. We're still on our way. And a lot of this discussion is actually going to be about how do we continue forward and what paths do we take to make the biggest impact that we can to achieve a goal and a topic and that everybody in this room obviously cares about. And just to kind of get you started on that, I wanted to give you some background on what our experiences have been in the past. So a little bit about our past projects. We were initially actually a live experience design company that specialized at the intersection of narrative and games. The big question we like to ask is how do we put people in the middle of an unfolding story in a way that each person's actions matter and we can show them how their decisions impact an unfolding narrative. Started with Alohomora, which was a year-long project in which we actually took participants to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. When you came in, it was actually based in the Tri-Visit tournament and Ilvermany, the American Wizarding School, and you discovered this entire underlying narrative that you could make a difference within by doing these things we called quests. And quests were a series of character interactions, games, and puzzles that A, unraveled a background narrative, but B, gave participants an opportunity to make a difference within the story through their actions. It was a very long process, but the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And after that, we took things to the next level with Ascend. Ascend was actually mythology themed for all of the mythology nerds out there, where we combined Greek, Egyptian, Maya, and Chinese mythology to create a godly family reunion that participants were invited into as demigods, which was awesome. The big conflict we had over there was that Zeus didn't know what the heck was going on. A lot of the big gods were being decapacitated, and he invited his demigod children to solve this mystery. When you come in, you realize that what's happening is that a revolution is rising. So a lot of the goddesses primarily realize that the world is a mess. There's environmental damage, discrimination, poverty. We need to fix this. How do we fix this? By taking away human free will. So participants were put in this moral dilemma where they could choose this to save the world by taking away human free will, or they could support the order and keeping human free will at the risk that they may not save the world and actually allow them to damage it further. We push the idea of personalization and agency over here, where actors asked a lot of very personal questions, such as if you had the opportunity to create the world, how would you do it? Do you think you could do it better? To see what people's natural inclinations and alignments were. And it was fascinating to see how people responded to those questions, where someone actually told one of our actresses that she wanted to take away human free will because she was abused as a child, and she didn't want anybody else to have the opportunity to abuse their children. So it was a very intimate process in which each participants really did kind of show what they cared about and align with the side in a way that they could make a difference within a story. After that, we went to the Angel City celebration, which was in collaboration with the Rotary Club of Los Angeles. This was a smaller event, but we were targeting a different audience, which was new to us. And we were actually working with children in Southern Los Angeles to create a Christmas themed experience. Over here, children got to help save Santa's nice list by doing activities that were good for them, and finally write their name in the nice list themselves with a promise on what they were going to do for the next year and what they did this year to belong on there, which was really a heartwarming experience. Throughout this process, which was really 3 years of work with a lot of the same people, we asked ourselves the question, how do we continue making things that matter to us with the people that we care about? And the most natural next step for us seemed to be to start a company. Starting a company is obviously a challenging task, and one of the first things that we needed to figure out is what did we value as a company and what did we want to create. And at the end of it, we realized that we wanted to create experiences that foster connectivity, collaboration, curiosity, and co-authorship, which is the idea that different participants come together and create experiences that impact one another and impact each other's larger narrative. Through these kinds of experiences, we wanted to create a world of explorers and change makers. And we did this by showing people and experiences how their personal story and actions impact our collective experience. We wanted to transition into a professional production with a large event we had planned in downtown Los Angeles, but unfortunately, much like the rest of the live and entertainment industry and the rest of our lives, really, we were interrupted by the pandemic. COVID hit us all like it hit everybody else over here, and we were overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness. Everything that we knew had come crumbling down. All of the plans that we had made were invalidated. All of the infrastructure that we relied upon no longer existed. And we were left with this overwhelming question of what do we do next? But when we were facing these circumstances, we realized something. And what we realized was that we were at a historic turning point, much like those that we talked about at our events. We like to say that we give people the opportunity to be a hero in their own stories. And through extraordinary circumstances, we allow people to discover the extraordinary within themselves. These were extraordinary circumstances. We were facing economic shambles. There was a civil rights movement that's going to be recorded in history, the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, we were then in the middle of a global pandemic, and there was this monumental upcoming election. Even though everybody was overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness, we realized that the actions we took now actually were more impactful than they ever had been in the past, that at least in our lives. Everything that we did, every choice that we made, whether we choose to wear a mask or not to wear a mask, who we chose to vote for, really was going to determine our future in ways that we could not even comprehend. And we asked ourselves the question, how do we stay true to our founding philosophy in these times? What can we do to make a difference in these circumstances? Which is when the topic of mis and disinformation was brought to our attention. Now we kind of go into the problem that all of you all are aware of, probably to a greater degree than we were just 6 months ago or a year ago. And we realize that mis and disinformation is something that inherently interferes with our founding philosophy. We like to tell people that your actions matter and you can create the future you want to see by taking action. However, what do you take actions on? You take actions based on information. And if the information that you're taking actions upon is unreliable or incomplete, then it's unlikely that you'll actually be taking decisions that are leading to the conclusions that you want to see. And we decided that this was a problem that we cared enough about to put together something with our skill set that will hopefully make a difference and equip people to better understand and tackle this issue in their daily lives, which is what led us to Agents of Influence 1. So Agents of Influence 1 was a time, to say the least. It was a digital transmedia spy-themed experience. And the term Agents of Influence is inspired by spy history, which is super cool. Agents of Influence actually refers to the spy faction that spreads mis and disinformation. But we wanted to reclaim that term by showing people that the term agency and influence are both powerful and can be used for the good. Agency is your ability to navigate the world around you. It implies that you're not just puppets or victims of circumstances. Instead, you can take action and you can move in the circumstances that you are put in based on your own will. And influence shows that you have power to change the world around you and not just navigate it, which is really an idea that can have positive connotations. You look at the term social media influencer, which can be slightly controversial, but also can be positive. You look at the Times Most Influential list, and we wanted to reclaim this term by showing people that they can have an impact. We capitalized on the parallels between the spy world and the real world, where what you don't know would hurt you. There were these larger forces that were trying to manipulate you in one way or the other to capitalize on their vested interests. And most people were unaware of how this information was affecting their behavior and who benefited from their behaviors in particular ways. Agents of Influence 1 was a transmedia experience, which meant that it went across different websites. There was a spy portal, you went to Google, Forbes articles, all sorts of things, and you needed to encounter misinformation in its native habitat to learn how to combat it and solve relevant puzzles. This was a huge challenge that I'm not sure we were completely prepared for. We had no experience in digital game design. We had no resources. We had a very ambitious goal where we wanted to create a week-long experience with 6 games, each on a different topic of misinformation, ranging from logical fallacies to media bias to faulty knowledge. And we wanted to do this before the election. So we were really crunching time. And it was an adventure, to say the least, as we discovered what we could create in those circumstances that we had put ourselves in. We found out that we could actually do a lot. Agents of influence was not everything we'd imagined it to be. There were several issues we encountered, such as the fact that the methods and information wasn't completely accurate. We didn't have extensive expertise in media literacy. There were a lot of tech bugs. We didn't have a clear audience. So the tone was appropriate for middle school students, while game design seemed for college students, and most of our audience seemed to be older people who were interested in the topic of misinformation. Still, we managed to build something that a lot of people found value in, as these quotes on the screen suggest. And one of the most overwhelming pieces of feedback we got was that people were interested in seeing this being developed into something that can actually be integrated into curriculum, which is what leads us to Agents of Influence 2 that we are going to be sharing with you. And we'd love to show you a little snippet of what we imagine that will look like. Are we missing the video, Jasper?
Welcome to Agents of Influence. In these interactive lessons, your middle school students will learn how to recognize and detect misinformation on the internet. The evil Dr. Disinfo, an embodiment of online misinformation, has thrown the world into chaos. To stop him, we'll need your students' help. Our spy agency has prepared a series of missions to take down Disinfo. Meet our newest recruit, Jenny. Hi! Every student's mission starts with a training module taught by their spy handler. Here, they're introduced to new tools and knowledge that will help them fight misinformation. For example, they may explore how to use an interactive media bias chart or learn about lateral reading. Social media sites are riddled with misinformation. Our mastermind, Dr. Disinfo, has created some fake accounts to influence unsuspecting victims online. Luckily, our new recruit is on the case.
I received a top secret file from my agency. They taught me how to detect photoshopped images and online robots, so now I know who's real and who's not.
With these tools, Jenny confronted Disinfo and took out a key part of his misinformation network. Great work, Jenny.
Thanks.
With her mission completed, Jenny's handler will debrief her, giving Jenny a chance to review what she's learned. When she's mastered all the tools in her toolkit, she'll be ready to recognize and combat misinformation in her daily life. And she'll become an official member of the Agents of Influence. Disinfo doesn't stand a chance.
So that's what we are up to next. And that's what Agents of Influence 1 has ultimately led to. Now that we are trying to create AOI 2.0, like we call it internally, the question is, what are the different components we need to be building to make this experience effective? First and foremost are the modules, which means educational goals that we need to be laying out for this experience to be as effective as it can be. And the current proposal we have is building 4 modules, which are all independent games that tackle different topics. We are talking implicit bias, faulty knowledge, manipulated content, and media bias as of now. And we'll see what that develops into as we go further into the process. This is all obviously placed into a larger narrative context and world where these middle school students will be recruited by the super school high school students that are starting a spy agency, where they will be equipped to go and tackle disinfo in real life and stop all of these villains who are trying to wreak havoc in different ways using different biases and different forms of misinformation and disinformation to basically ruin the world. This kind of leads to the larger question of what these gameplay mechanics are going to be. And our students are going to be given a goal on what kind of mystery they need to unravel and information they need to discover the truth about. They will be tasked to collect evidence from a variety of sources, ranging from human conversation to social media sources and articles, put together different pieces of the puzzle where they're encouraged to ask critical questions on what's missing within the information that they've been given, and then tasked with persuading others of what they believe the truth to be. This is going to finally lead to the final aspect of components that will make up this game, which is performance tracking. We need to see how well our students are doing, and we want to integrate mechanics for guardian figures such as parents and teachers to measure the progress of their students, which will also give us effective feedback to develop this experience further. As we are kind of going forward in this journey, we understand that we are not alone. This is something that a lot of people are trying to tackle in various angles, including the Media Education Lab, who have been so kind to host us. And we want to create something that adds value to this large ecosystem where people are developing everything from games on mis and disinformation to full-blown curriculum on media literacy. And we want to understand how we can supplement the work that they're already doing to create a more symbiotic and synergetic relationship to accomplish a common goal. We understand that we need to be mindful of the goals that teachers are trying to achieve within a classroom setting so that we can equip them to comfortably integrate what we build into the classroom environment. And therefore, we are being mindful of standards ranging from Common Core to NAMLE standards to ISTE standards so that we are building upon all of the work educators have done to determine what effective educational goals are and lining ourselves up with what the experts consider best practices on effective media literacy education. This also kind of leads to a larger conversation on all of the different stakeholders who are invested in seeing our country and world have a brighter future by equipping the younger generation to be more responsible digital citizens of the future. And state legislation is starting to recognize media literacy as an issue that they want to tackle. And we really want to thank Media Literacy Now for all of the advocacy they're doing on that level to implement these laws. And we are going to be piggybacking off of their efforts and trying to approach the states that are already receptive to media literacy to see how we can integrate the game that we build into the work that they are doing. This is all leading to the final point of distribution. It doesn't help to have the most awesome thing in the world if people can't see it and it's not being used. And a large question we are asking ourselves is how do we get this experience to the right people so that our students are given the opportunity to play and learn accordingly? Obviously, parents are the direct route to the children, but teachers and librarians are also extremely invested in the future of these students and have the responsibility of educating them in many of these topics. There are also larger infrastructures that we can be working within. So if school administration adopts our games, then it is something that will be applicable to a number of different classes. And if even larger organizations like governments recognize the value in it, then obviously we'll be able to make maximum impact. And we are interested in collaborating with other educational organizations that share similar goals to see how we can work with them to help add value to what they're already doing. As we kind of go forward with the distribution channels and work on the experience that we are building, we just want to flag that we can't do it alone, just like none of you can. We are taking on an extremely large challenge with very limited resources, and any support you can provide is hugely appreciated in achieving this larger goal. Here are some of the things that we are looking for if anyone has any ideas on how we can achieve it. First and foremost is testing. As we said, we need to have an incredible product that is actually achieving the goals that we want it to. And that can never be done in isolation. We need students to be testing this product to see how effective it is and to start equipping students early with all of these skills. We need expertise on a range of different topics, whether it's mis and disinformation, whether it's how to teach middle school students, whether it's how to distribute a product like this, whether it's finances. We are just starting to learn in this entire journey on how to make this product and experience as effective as we can. And we welcome all input, no matter what perspective it's from, to help us build this further. There's funding, as always. Everyone's looking for funding. We have a team that's putting in so many hours into this. so we can create something that is impactful. And we would appreciate the financial support and security to give to our team so they can continue working on this without having 7 jobs on the side. If you can't help us with anything directly, any publicity helps. Give us a social media shout out when we are testing or when we are finally out there. Tell your friends and family about what we are doing. Like, please help us spread the word if you think that this is something that could add value to what you're doing and you care about the same causes that we do. And finally, there's distribution. When time comes, we would love for this to be shared as widely as it can be to achieve the largest impact it can. So together we can create a stronger generation and more responsible generation of digital citizens who critically evaluate information in the future. So that's all I have for you folks. Thank you so much for listening to me. This brings us back to Agents of Influence, a spy-themed media literacy game focusing on mis and disinformation that will hopefully align with standards and be adopted by a number of distribution channels. It's really a mouthful.
That was fascinating. And if you're like me, there are a lot of things about this idea that really excite you. So we're going to do small group breakout rooms, and you're going to be in a room with about 5 or 6 other people, including members of the Agents of Influence team. What we'd like to do is have you talk through, what do you like about this idea? What questions do you have about this idea? Why do you think gaming or the spy theme might be effective as a way to gamify media literacy? And what might some challenges be that this team can anticipate? Those questions are pretty open, but you're going to have about 12 minutes to talk them over. And then when we get back together as a large group, we'll reflect on some of the key insights that emerge from talking over this cool idea. Give me a thumbs up if you understand the function of the small group activity. Here's the thing, I'm going to break you into small groups, but if it turns out you're in a group with nobody, or maybe people aren't talking or whatever, just come back into the main room and I will reassign you. Okay, rooms are all open. Remember to introduce yourselves to the members of your team so you have a productive dialogue and conversation.
We work in a half a dozen different domains, the natural world, so we get students out into nature, virtual reality, simulated worlds. This one reminds me of the work we're doing with Brian Collins, a former Disney Imagineer. And so we also work in the built environment where we're going to the World Expo in Dubai next January.
Oh, hello, I'm Mark Davis. I'm a middle school teacher of digital literacy in Rhode Island. I also I'm finishing my doctoral work in digital literacy and education, and I work with Renee at the Media Education Lab, and we've taught lots and lots of great lessons on media literacy, particularly around the language of propaganda. So I was really excited about this, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more.
Hello, I am George Parliamentum. I am from Chicago. I don't teach currently. I am kind of semi-retired. I do work for an international organization doing some projects through grants. Right now I'm working on a project to do an investigative journalism project in some 7 of the countries in the Pacific Islands. So excited about it, just now in the planning period. Nice to be with you today.
I'll go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen, and I work at USC Annenberg's Norman Lear Center, which is a research center measuring the impact of entertainment in terms of its political, cultural, and social, etc. Impact. And we have a lot of expertise and interest, obviously, in measuring the impact of game narratives as part of entertainment and how it impacts the audience's knowledge, attitude, and behavior. So I'm super excited to be here learning about the media literacy gamification.
I'm Kate Sherrill. I work at the University of Southern Indiana. So I'm working more with college students, though I do work some with some high school students who are doing dual enrollment in our courses. If I happen to suddenly disappear, it's because I have a dog who had surgery today and I'm keeping tabs on her and checking on her. So.
Does everybody introduce themselves?
Yes, yes.
So what did you like about this idea? And what questions did it raise for you? And what do you think are the reasons why gamification might be a useful avenue or not? What are your thoughts?
I had questions about how they envision it being rolled out. I mean, is it going to be a class project? Is it going to be sort of after school, or is looking for individual teachers to take on groups of students through it, or do the students come in individually? So I'm just curious about that.
Great questions about implementation. Right, right.
I've had the pleasure of talking with Anahita a little before this. I would, and talking about kind of to your question, I think one way that they are looking at is folks like myself who have an existing classroom and embedding it as part of our lesson plans. And I think recognizing they need a little bit of help on the scope and sequence aspect. And I think the part that really kind of excites me is that when I'm teaching a lot of these lessons with students, that when we can use gamification, it is an incredibly, authentic experience to them because they feel very connected with it. And I commented in the chat, like just the idea of calling it agents of influence and explaining that you are, taking agency and that you're looking at influence, just that conversation right there is going to be really empowering to the adolescent groups that I work with. So I was excited about that. I'm curious to hear more.
Yeah, I found myself, of course, I'm fascinated at the way in which like spy culture is so embedded in popular culture, right? And how much we know about spy culture from watching, you just name it, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, everything. I mean, everything, all kinds of aspects of film and television culture relate to it. So to me, it was really intriguing when she said something about the high school handlers, or the students would be the agents, but they would all have a handler. And it's like, so the idea of kind of tapping into some of the background knowledge that we have about spy culture from our exposure to popular culture seemed really just a clever engagement device. So I thought that was intriguing.
And we're tapped with looking at also cybersecurity. That's another thing is really strong in the computer science field. So I see the overlap between those two as well. I think that's going to be an amazing connection. What
did she say the topics that they were going to focus on? I think she said one was implicit bias. Do you remember the other topics that she said were going to be the modules? She said each module was going to have a different focus. Implicit bias was one, but I didn't quite catch the other topics.
I think there was something like logic of fallacy or something like
that.
that.
That was the other one.
Yeah.
Because Mark, when you were mentioning the idea of scope and sequence, I started thinking about, and this goes back to Marty's question about implementation. Like, what's the time commitment? How do we justify this use of time? Is it mostly kids interacting with the platform, or is there a social component to this? And I have a bias kind of against platforms where the engagement is me and the AI, right? My bias about that is that too much of our culture is already kind of plugged into, something that seems personalized, but is really not. So I would think it would be really cool if there was some way for some part of the engagement to be truly social. But I don't know if that's possible.
That's what I was going to say is I want to see teamwork in there, not just, clicking and responding, or, so how much interaction and involvement for the students.
I think two good connections for them would be the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. They would love to work with this project. And then that 826, that group of after school or, writing workshop kinds of things that are all across the country. Is it the one I'm forgetting whether it's in Chicago or New York, that is a spy related themed thing.
Cool.
And the story behind it was they had set up these workshops, and then they found out that the place they were in was zoned for commercial, so they couldn't be there. So they created a fake store in front of their workshop space. And it turned out that those became so popular that they could actually sell stuff. So the one that I'm referring to, they all are different themes. One's a hero supply store, but this one is called the Boring Store. And it's called that because the clients were spies, and they didn't want other people to walk in. So they said, don't come in here. This store is not, but you could go in and buy stuff that spies would buy,
Great.
and that's how they fund their workshops. But I think those two would fit in really nicely, and they got great people to work with as well.
I'm making notes. I will definitely communicate those ideas. That's a great observation. Do you have any concerns about the gamification of media literacy? And if so, what are your concerns?
I don't have as many concerns as many people, and I don't have the concerns that you and Karen expressed about the digitalization kind of thing. In fact, I'm curious as to exploring this in virtual worlds, the actual headsets kinds of things, because I think that way you can get the interaction, the socialization, the adventure, moving around, and all of those things. So between virtual and augmented reality, I think that this would lead to that a lot. But at the same time, it would be great to have these, sort of like escape room kind of climates and stuff like that. So
right, where there's truly collaboration and engagement, peer-to-peer engagement in that way that an escape room has.
I would be. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kristen.
Sorry, go. I echo what Marty said. I think there are many things that can be tested as Anahita develops this games, testing the parasocial interactions between the students and the characters that are in the game, how much of the identification that they feel or empathy towards, or etc. How effective is that in them learning about information or affecting their attitudes or towards somebody or something. And I'm also curious about, this is like a different topic, but curious about like the level of different target audiences. I feel like right now the initial target is US domestic middle school students or students in general. But I'm wondering if there is like a broad plan that'll eventually include a general public in the US, because I'm pretty sure that it'll be not only helpful, but people will be really super interested in engaging with this game to inform themselves. I know that she mentioned that originally there were older people interested in misinformation trying to play around with this game. And I know this might seem like a super, too far stretched of a goal right now, but I think I can see that this game could roll out and influence foreign audiences as well. I work on the State Department funded cultural diplomacy projects. And obviously they're very much interested in media literacy programs, engaging with the international audiences, for example, in Ukraine and many of the Russia's periphery countries. And they host workshops to connect the American media professionals with the foreign audiences, whether it be students or artists or filmmakers, etc., to help them counter disinformation in the area of entertainment in their own countries, like Lithuanian filmmakers who really are eager to try to come up with their own content. But disinformation, misinformation has always been one of the topics that State Department's eager to roll out and engage with in terms of their interactions with the foreign audiences. So I feel like if this game really takes it up to that level, they would love to use this as part of the tool to to kind of just engage with them without having so many strings attached to it,
Right.
So yeah, just
I
a
wanted to
thought.
build on that too, Kristen, because that was what I was thinking is when it comes to a culturally responsive type of piece, I think the thing that worried me most when I first talked to her, as I said, it also might reinforce stereotypes that sometimes happen when these things are built with, as you said, like an adolescent American audience. The example I use for those who are of that generation is the old Carmen Sandiego games create a lot of stereotypes about what foreign people would look like. And it had an implicit bias that was more, liberal or, things that we don't want to create influence on. We want them to be able to unpack. And so I'm a little concerned that that might get lost in the message if we're not really opening up for diversity in ways that I don't think they've fully anticipated yet.
It would be interesting if part of the game included solving a section of the game required you to talk to your parents or to an older person, to get clues, things that they would know just offhand from growing up that a younger person wouldn't, and so that they could be brought into the game.
Oh, what a wonderful idea. Some part of the puzzle involves talking to your family. It's great. Great. Okay, I think we came back with lots of great ideas we can offer. I'm going to ask one member of this group to make one synthesis or one creative comment. So you guys can fight it out amongst yourself. As I close all the rooms, we'll have about 1 minute. We can figure out who's going to make what points as we go back to our main room. Okay, this is my favorite part of a Zoom meeting. I love this part the best. I don't know why it never gets old to see all the people kind of pop back into the room. It's like when you go to a conference, right? And the room fills up, right? So people are coming back into the room. It looks like everybody's back now. Well, let's just do a little thumbs up if that was an interesting conversation. Was that an interesting conversation? Yes, it was. So let's see if we can do some synthesis of some of the big ideas that came out of your small group conversation. Who wants to go first? Unmute your microphone and tell us a little bit about something that captured your interest, that was useful and productive, or something that you want the team to know about.
All right, I got elected from my group. So a couple quick things were, we talked about some mixed modes, being that this could one day be connected to something like virtual or augmented reality, which was really interesting. There was definitely a consensus and agreement that there should be some tasks that aren't just about using the game itself and relying on its algorithms to determine feedback, that there needed to be conversations with peers, ideally to have a conversation with an adult, especially a trusted adult, to have ongoing conversation about what they gathered and connected. And we had a lot of pieces around cultural responsive teaching, making sure that we're not just bookmarking this to students who are in the public school adolescent level in the United States, but looking at broader audiences so that we are looking at all ages and foreign markets to try and ensure that we're not creating a series of biases through that as well.
Thanks for sharing. Who's next?
We had such a diverse group, and it was fascinating. And we had Anita, is that the right name? Oh, okay, so and I think different people should speak up, like Costa and Frank and Darren and Marilyn, because we went from everything like a pyramid of fidelity, getting at conceptual procedural knowledge, and then the actual elements, and that it is a simulated setting, which actually follows Pam Grossman's teaching approach, and that it's really important to be relevant. Costa had a question about assessment and accountability, and how will you measure outcomes? How will you know where you've come and so we found out it's evidence-based learning, and that you guys are working on this, right, Anahita? And
Correct. Just like so everyone knows, we accidentally skipped 1 or 2 slides. Tech came in the way. And a quick overview of those slides is that we were interested in targeting middle school students for the number of hours they spend online, the fact that they get most of their information digitally, and the fact that they're at a critical point in their lives where they're forming habits that are going to serve them for the rest of their adulthood. And the second part was the pyramid of fidelity that she mentioned, which is that there are several levels of learning. There's synthetic learning, related knowledge, which is definitional, conceptual knowledge, which is placing those in larger frameworks of learning. How does a doctor do something? What is a stethoscope used for? Procedural knowledge, how do we actually use a stethoscope in context? And then there's elemental learning, which we consider the highest forms of learning, which is actually doing something, going on the internet and tackling misinformation, and simulated learning, which is game-based learning, where you can create realistic situations and use all of these skills in a particular context, which is most transferable to the real world. So quick update over there. We apologize for that, but those are some of the things that we talked about.
That helps us understand a little bit about your rationale for middle school students and the way you're thinking about the different kinds of skills, knowledge, and competencies that you want to build. Let's hear from 3 more people about what happened in your group, what ideas came up, what did you find intriguing about this project, what challenges do you think this team will face as they move forward? How might you be involved? Who's next?
I guess I'll go for my group. We also talked about assessment, the challenge of monetizing. I went to Games for Change for many years and found that they, was income based, right? All these young people wanted to make money, less interested in teaching media literacy and SEL. We talked about how to break the game into smaller components to work with teachers' schedules. We were mystified by the leading states in media literacy, Texas, like really? And with these great laws to teach media literacy, where are the resources that really enable media literacy education to go forward? Anybody from my group, from Jasper's group, want to add? Okay.
What happened? What did you guys talk about in your group? What concerns do you have about this project? What do you think that the team should be worried about? What do you think the team should be excited about?
Be excited about that. Kids are going to be motivated. They're going to be extremely motivated by this, and you're going to have a captive audience, because once you start, gamifying things and connecting that to real world content, the authentic learning piece in there is you're going to have them in the palm of your hand. So there's definitely a lot of enthusiasm. I can guarantee that.
Yes, so
I would agree with that too. And I think that there will be a lot of teachers who'd be eager to help you test a new product and give you ideas.
Please let us know how to get in touch with them. Another big question we've been getting is, how do we stay in touch? I've gotten a couple of private messages, so I threw a form in. We would love to stay in touch with you. I'd love to be connected to teachers who will help us test. I would love to see what input you all have to add. So please fill this form out and I'll set up times to chat with everybody.
Did you mention where the form is?
I just put it on the chat.
Cool.
I'd like to throw in just one thing. It must have been about 30 years or so. We started using computer simulations in our laboratory so that we didn't have to use live animals anymore and run into all the PETA folks. And what we found was that the state of simulations and computer programs and so forth was so much better in the private sector, in the gaming sector, that the really cheap displays that we could use in our laboratories, the kids were bored with them instantly because they were used to things that were like 3D graphics and all this. We didn't have any of that. And so we found that they lost interest almost instantly in what we were trying to do with our simulations. And you might run into the same thing now, because if you look at what the kids play with in their real games, they're sensational. And that's what you're going to be competing with, because whether you want to or not, the kids are going to be comparing it.
Great observation, Frank. Great observation. Thank you for that insight. What other ideas came up in your group that you'd like to share? What do you like about this project? What concerns do you have about this project? What do you think is the future of gamification for media literacy?
Can I say something?
I think it's really inevitable.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It feels like a natural progression. I know that my students, they want to engage in any kind of challenge. They want a challenge, and they're always wanting to do something. Okay, and so I see it as being just ripe. I think it's built on, thus far, it appears to be built on a really strong foundation of standards and using all of what has come before on a heat test. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. I can't wait to try and test it.
Thank you for sharing. Costa.
Okay, thank you. Well, as a game-based learning research and also a media literacy research, working on a project, I found that okay, motivation is very exciting, of course, but it's very difficult to have a team to understand that a game is a game. What I mean is the content should be the learning goals should be integrated in the game ability. We cannot just do games and making quiz. It's another thing. It's using the knowledge of media literacy, for instance, to solve problems. And another problem is how we measure it, because I'm working on it and it's not been easy, as I already said in my team. And but this and also the schools are not prepared. I'm talking from the case of Portugal, but with the pandemic, I believe it's all over the world. The conditions of how can they exercise? They use these materials in school in some countries and outside the school. It's okay. So we can use game-based learning with digital games, but I'm one of the digital games things. But I think it's very promising because it's their culture. It's putting the youth culture into the classroom. Thank you.
Yeah, great point. And know that can be incredibly challenging. But we also know that like April said, this is a ripe topic, and that you're in the right place at the right time. Let's give a round of applause to Anna Hita and her team for this amazing work. We really enjoyed getting a chance to explore agents of influence with you. Thank you so much for joining us at the Media Education Lab. Come back and see us next week when we have the book club We're talking about eco-media literacy, Antonio Lopez's new book. That's happening on March 1st. Hope to see you then. Again, thanks to everyone at Agents of Influence for joining us. I'm Renee
Thank
Hobb.
you for coming.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Bye.